Okay, so something we talk about a lot in coach education now is using the right pitch geography. Now I appreciate that when you're coaching, a lot of you won't have a full-size pitch to work on, but if you do, try and use the correct pitch geography. Even if you only have a half pitch or a quarter of a pitch, you can still use this, but you have to be a bit more creative. But by pitch geography, we mean set up the session on the area of the pitch that the session is going to be running from. So if you're working out wide, set it up out wide. If you're working in the penalty area on defending or finishing, use the penalty area. Midfield, use midfield. By doing this, you'll give those players the extra 5% in their learning and what they need. So, for example, you've got pitch markings. Players understanding that, right, there's a pitch marking there. This is going to mean I need to make a movement this way or a movement that way, and they'll recognise the things that are happening around them. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of sessions. So if you're working on finishing, you should always be setting a finishing practice up in this area of the pitch. Okay, ideally in the penalty area, but it depends what type of finishing you're working on. So if I was going to work on 1v1 finishing, where I was going to have a striker, my blue team of the strikers, and a defender, I want this practice in and around the penalty area, because that's where my striker is going to be and that's where my striker is going to be finishing. Now this practice might be nice and as simple as I'm going to set up this area here with cones. This player on the outside has a ball. We're playing offsides. The job for my striker is try and receive the ball and then score in the goal. Okay, and you can give the striker a deadline of how many goals can you score in a minute, and then you can rotate players around, or you've got 30 seconds to score a goal to add more pressure on them. Anything like that. Because now this player is thinking about what movements do I need to make in and around the penalty area to receive the ball, to beat my defender, and then try and score. The things your striker will also see from here is, if they're looking up there, they can see this goal. So they know where this goal is by looking at that goal. So if that player knows they're receiving the ball here, they know they're in line with the post. And then one touch out of their foot there should create enough space for them to curl it into there. You watch a lot of strikers in the penalty area and it looks like instinct and they know where the goal is. That's because they can relate to where these lines are, where the opposite goal is, and what area of the pitch they're in. So you might end up having a practice like this where you've got 3 servers and this player can play off any of the servers and receive the ball back to try and score, but having it in and around the penalty area makes a massive difference. On the flip side, that is from an attacking perspective. From a defending perspective, if you're doing defending in the penalty area and a topic such as maybe defending crosses, you might have a little pattern out here where this player plays back here and down there for this player to move onto the ball and then cross it. And the attacker has got 1 touch to finish. So what the defender's doing here is thinking, right, I've got to get in a position where I can see the player and the ball, but thinking about where their goal is as well. Because if this player comes all the way out here, it's probably not going to follow out there. He's going to think, actually, I need to protect this central area. So it's getting the players thinking about the pitch geography, and you're getting that extra 5% at your session, like I said. Now, that's one example. That's in and around the penalty area. If you're working on midfield, ideally set it up in midfield and ideally use the halfway line. So for example, if we're working on movement to receive, set up a square here. Again, they can see the goals, so they've got the reference points of the goals, but the big reference point they've got is the halfway line. So you could play a practice where the players are trying to get the ball from one server to another server and then back and forth, and that's what they're trying to do. If the blue team win it, they will then do the same. So the blue team win the ball off the reds. Their job now is to play the ball end to end. For them to be successful here, these 3 players probably need to create a triangle. So it's nice and simple. By having a halfway line in, if you say to these players you've always got to have 1 player either side of the halfway line, that should help them create a triangle. Because if this player drops in here, that player's understanding, look at the halfway line, there's 2 that side of it, I need to be this side of it. If you end up like that, that's where you can say to the players, well, you're all too deep, okay, or you're all too high up, you're not creating an angle for each other. So by using the halfway line, they have this little reference point that will help with their movement, with their spacing, as well as you can then challenge players to play forward. So if you're receiving in this half of the pitch, can you always try and play your pass into either the other side or to the target player? That way you're encouraging players to receive on the back foot and play forward, rather than combining with a player that's already in your half, which will invite pressure from the other team. So that's the second example of where you might use the pitch geography. The third example of where you might use pitch geography, for example, is out wide. So if I take my players away, so if we're doing, let's do a defending one now. We're doing defending out wide. So I might set up a session where I'm trying to get players to prevent crosses coming in. So I set up a little practice like this. There's my attackers. This would be a simpler one for younger players. I'm going to create a gate here that players can dribble through or pass through, and a gate here that players can dribble through or pass through. Okay, and I'll have a little mini goal here. So the way the practice works, this player will play a pass into the first blue. The blue has got to score by either dribbling through or passing through one of these gates. This defender's job then is to stop that defender getting through those gates or passing it through, which would represent a cross. So if you look now on a whole pitch, that is a very realistic position for a fullback to be defending a wide player in. This is a realistic position for a wide player to be attacking a fullback in. That is a realistic area for them to cross the ball or drive through as well. Okay, and now what you're getting this player to think about is, right, how close can I get that player to the touchline? Because that touchline can act as an extra defender. Okay, if that player receives the ball there, where do I need to cut off first? Because actually cutting off this goal first stops potentially that early driven cross. Might float one over, but it stops that. If they come forward, now I've got to get tighter as they get closer down this line to stop them getting that crossing. By adding a little bit of pitch geography, it changed the decision making from I've got to just defend 1v1 to I've got to defend these areas, which will then help that player on the pitch. So when you're setting your sessions up, it's nice and simple. If you had, let's say you play 9-a-side, that's your two goalkeepers. If you played 9-a-side and you play 3-3-2, let's just set a 3-3-2 up. Against, and you're playing against a 3-3-2. So you go, right, that's our formations, that's what we're playing. And now you're going to work on a topic. So your topic is playing into the striker's feet. So realistically, if you're the blue team, where are your strikers going to receive the ball to feet? Probably in this area here. So somewhere in this area here is where the strikers are going to receive the ball to feet, maybe slightly in the penalty area. So you need that part of the practice, that part of the pitch in your practice. If they're receiving it to feet, they're probably receiving it from a midfielder. So you then need that part of the practice as well. So then you go, all right, that's what the part of the area on pitch I need to use. Who's going to be the players passing it into them? Probably these three players are going to be the realistic ones passing into the striker's feet. So there you go, you've got 3v3 in there, and then a striker will probably come in, so a striker in there. So you might have it end up with a practice a little bit like that, where you've got your 3 defenders, blues attacking the goal, sorry, not reds. You've got your 2 strikers, 3 blues against these players in here. So there we go. So that is where you would roughly set up your pitch to play. You would then make the decision of, is this going to be a practice where we're just playing into a striker's feet? Let me get a different coloured pen. You're playing into a striker's feet, and then you're either trying to combine to get over this line, or through some little mini goals, or trying to get into the striker's feet to set back to then scoring some mini goals. Or if you want to include the goal in it, if you've got that, you can have this area in there as well, and they're playing into the striker to try and score in the main goal. But you're setting it up in the area of the pitch that the players are going to use. That's it. That's the first one.